Plot is the main sequence of events that make up the story. So it has to do with the order or the sequence of events. Here we should understand clearly the difference between story and plot. In general sense, story and plot are the same thing, but for us there is a big difference. Story is the chronological order of events as they happened from one time to another time. That is story. While plot is the order in which they are deliberately arranged by the writer. So they are not in the chronological order. Something that actually happened later may be the starting point of our story. So, it is the deliberate arrangement of the incidents by the writer to help us understand the story and to make it more interesting. This is the main difference. While reading a story, what we are supposed to do, we should note what is or what are the most important event or events in our story. How is the plot structured? After reading a story, certainly we will be able to give it a chronological order that will be the story for us, and then we will see how that order is changed by the writer, by the author, by the narrator to make it effective. That will be our plot. What is the structure of the plot? Is it linear? Runs smoothly on the same level? Is it chronological? Or does it move around between present and past using the flashback techniques? We will have to point out, demarcate those points where there is the shift in time. Take the next point. Conflict, climax and resolution. We can simply call it conflict and climax. Conflict is tension. It is usually the crux of a short story. It is the force of the story and is related to the main character. In a short story, there is usually one main struggle in life of that main character. It may be internal conflict within the character or an external conflict caused by the surroundings or environments in which the main character finds himself living. The climax. The climax is the point of greatest tension or intensity in the short story. At the point of climax, our suspense is the most in the story. It can also be the point where events take a major turn as the story moves towards its conclusion. Generally, it is somewhere near the end of the narrative. Note when the climax takes place in our story. Then, resolution. The resolution is the end of the story. Resolution means that all the problems are resolved, all the knots are untied. So it is also called denouement, but we will take it as resolution. It focuses on how the conflict is ultimately resolved. Carefully read the end of any story and think whether the closing sentences, closing settings are significant. Do they impart some solution to our tension created during reading the story? And how the end relates or connects to the opening. If it is a good story, the end of the story will automatically remind us about the opening of the story. Try to find out these points when we will take our stories. The narrator and point of view. This is a new thing for the students of literature. The narrator is the person telling the story. Consider this question. Are the narrator and the main character the same? Or the narrator is different from the author of a story? Generally, there is difference between the author, the writer, and the narrator of the story. If the story is autobiographical, then we can say that the author himself is the narrator of the story. Otherwise, the writer speaks through his character. The speaker of the story and the writer or author of the story are not identical. The narrator may be the main character or anyone from the other characters of our story, or may be unidentified as a third person narrator. He may or may not take part in the actions of the story if he is from the characters of the story. By point of view, we mean from whose eyes the story is being told. Generally, it is being told by the eyes of the speaker. Speaker is the narrator. You can understand it if you can understand the role of a sutradhar in our dramas. Short stories tend to be told through one character's point of view. Consider the following questions while reading a story. Who is the narrator or speaker in the story? Is the story written in the first person I? If it has I, then it is our first person narrative and the narrator is either the hero or maybe from one of the characters or maybe even an overseer. Is there an is the story written in a detached third person where he and she is the point of view? Then it will be a third person narrative. Is there an all-knowing third person who can reveal what all the characters are thinking and doing at all times and in all places? Generally, in every story, we will find that the narrator is that type of magical person who can enter minds of every character, who can delve deep, who can measure their emotions and their feelings and their ideas. So that is the power of the narrator. Next, style. Style is the ability of the writer to make artistic representation of the matter. It is the personal ability of the writer. It is related to diction. Diction means the choice and the use of words. It is related to the use of imagery, the tone produced in the story, the emotions, how they are portrayed and how they are transported to the readers. We can say that style is the overall appeal of the story. It has to do with the author's attitude towards the subject. To understand the style, we should notice the language and its use. The author's language can be full of figurative language by using metaphors, symbols, personifications, and imageries. The tone or mood may be ironic, humorous, cold or indifferent, passive, dramatic, or reflective, thinking about the life. Our next point is theme. The theme is built on a topic and how the topic affects the human conditions, society, or life in general. Every story is related conditions of our life. As a reader, focus on what the story is revealing about the topic, what is the subject, and how that subject is treated in the story. It will create our theme statement. The theme should be expressed as a statement, a general observation about human nature, though it should not be judicial. We are not to judge whether it is good or bad. To understand the theme of a story, make a list of the important images, topics, subjects, problems which you find in the text. Try to create a statement or try to give a summary type of form to all these words. You should consider these points to reach to the theme of a poem, to a story. What is the story about? What is its general topic? And how is that topic developed? How the characters change? What symbols are used? How the climax is dealt? How the resolution is produced? Do you notice any patterns in imagery, the words, the presentation by the author? Does the title give any significant hint? Sometimes the theme moves around the title. Title represents the theme of the story. Try to find out whether there is any statement or description that reveals a theme or observation. With the help of these things, especially the title, the development of the action in the story, and the conclusion, with the help of these things, we will be able to understand the theme of a poem. So, these are the points you should keep in mind while reading a short story or a novel. Remember, the difference between short story and novel is only that of size. Being students of literature, we should be able to evaluate a story critically and comprehensively as a piece of art. We are not the common readers only to enjoy the story, we are to do these special tasks also. Analyzing a story on these points will be a great help to examine theme, form, pattern, presentation, and appeal of a story, and also to see how the writer has produced the effect successfully or unsuccessfully or partially successful. Again, we are to do all this exercise objectively, not subjectively. There is no question of our personal like or dislike. So, here we come to our first story, The Meeting Pool by Ruskin Bond. I am giving you the text on these screens in case you do not have. Go through these texts, try to understand our poem, our story, and then we will discuss it, the meeting pool, on these points in our next class. So, thank you very much and take care of your health during these dangerous days and stay safe.